J.D. Vance is a pretty weird guy, and he's always been a weird guy from his childless cat lady comments to what he said about decorated Olympian acknowledging her limits back in 2021.
What I find so weird about this, and it reflects more on the media than it does on Simone Biles, is that we've tried to turn a very tragic moment, Simone Biles quitting the Olympic team, into this act of heroism. And I think it reflects pretty poorly on our sort of therapeutic society that we try to praise people not for moments of strength, not for moments of heroism, but for their weakest moments.
It's not praising people, it's acknowledging their public troubles, and acknowledging that is not, unnormal. It's a normal thing to do. And that was a super weird thing to say about Simone Biles. But weird comments like that are a hallmark of this ticket. Just listen to that guy at the top.
They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs.
They're taking their jobs, and they're taking the black jobs.
I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job.
Well, Simone Biles had the perfect response to both of those men on the Republican ticket. To Vance questioning her abilities, she is now the most decorated gymnast in U.S. history. And to Donald Trump, this morning, the six-time gold medalist tweeted, quote, "I love my black job." I'm joined now by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Democrat of Texas. Welcome, Congresswoman. You loving your black job?
It's good to see you, Chairman. I am.
I'm loving my black job right now, too. So it's good good that we got work. This is about as crazy and weird as it gets. But you know what I really enjoy about you, in addition to your public service, is the fact that you call it out and you acknowledge it and you lean into it to try to help contextualize it against the backdrop of the real work that we're seeing that needs to be done in Congress. When you're telling, the intro of seeing him talk there, talking about his family, his young son that way, going after Simone Biles, who was very public about a very difficult thing. What should the public be making of moments like this? As you, in your work, try to contrast what you are going through in the House with a lot of weirdness, but then in moments from the presidential campaign that we see from J.D. Vance and from the vice president.
Yeah, what is so frustrating is that these are the guys that their answer to everything is DEI, and they are basically trying to minimize black folk and saying the only types of jobs that we can have are the jobs, say, that someone who's immigrating from somewhere else and coming to our country, which for the most part, these are entry-level jobs. Those are the only jobs we're qualified for, right? Like, you can't be the GOAT when it comes to the Olympics. You can't be me and sit in Congress. And the reality is that these are people that are not qualified for the positions in which they're running for. And it is a threat when you are a Donald Trump who just happened to be born with a silver spoon in his mouth, who never worked for anything a day in his life. And when he did start working, it was always trying to perpetrate a fraud. That's what we saw him do with his businesses, whether we're talking about real estate or if we're talking about his fake universities. It's always been a fraud. And right now he's trying to perpetrate a fraud on the American people, not once, but for a second time. And we rejected it the second time. And I'm looking forward to him being rejected again when a black woman shows him that her black job, her next black job, is being the president of the United States.
Yeah, that'll be quite a moment. And particularly when you think about what Politico has as a headline about J.D. Vance, suggesting that the vice presidential picks don't matter. So that tells us what he thinks about his job that he's trying to go after. So, and really in so many ways, when you looked at and saw the evolution of those moments at NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, you really saw Donald Trump being confronted with the question, okay, tell us, you brought this up, what is it? And then stumbling when he's pressed to express it and explain it. Same with DEI. You know, when he's asked, okay, what about DEI? And he's like, well, define it. Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he couldn't pull the trigger to understand it, and yet you have him right now using these terms to try to divide the population. How do you see Kamala Harris's campaign having dealt with some of this so far as she gets ready to roll out her VP nomination choice, as well as the Democratic convention going into Labor Day weekend, celebrating the labor of men and women across this country, and then the campaign?
Yeah, so, you know, what I tell people all the time is that the vice president has been a black woman her whole life. I know that Donald Trump tried to say that she just became one at some point in time. I got news for him. She came into this earth as a black woman. She will leave this earth as a black woman. And so what people don't understand is that this is the skin that she has lived in. And she has consistently been in spaces that others said that she should never, ever enter, right? Like, she has consistently shattered glass ceilings. And so this is someone that is used to people looking at her and believing that she's inferior simply because she's a woman and or a woman of color, when in reality they knew that they were the ones that probably were not on her level and probably should never have been in the same spaces with her. And so I think that she is handling this with the grace that she has, but at the same time, just like Simone Biles knew how to clap back, when we saw the vice president right here in Atlanta, Georgia, clap back and say, listen, you got a lot to say it to my face. What he's going to learn is that black women, one thing we are very good at is the clap back. And we know how to stand on business. And I think that that's what we're going to see. But one of the important points that I do want to make about NABJ and the fact that Donald Trump had to sit down for an actual interview, for actual journalism, this is what is so threatening for him. This is why in Project 2025, they don't want independent journalism, which is one of those things that we value in a democracy, is the freedom of press. And it's something that they are trying to make sure that we can turn back the hands of time on. This is why he loves a person like Putin, because Putin controls the propaganda. And that's what he's gotten out of Fox News. I thought that Fox News would decide that they would go back and want to do the right thing after they got sued for millions and had to pay up. But listen, so long as people are tuning in, they're making that money back again, and they continue to pretend to be, I call them faux news, right? Like, they pretend to be actual journalists, but they're not. What we saw was actual journalism. And honestly, the only time that Donald Trump seems to be challenged is when there is a black woman on the other side, whether we're talking about Letitia James, or we're talking about Fani Willis, or we're talking about the vice president who will become the president, or we're talking about those black women journalists such as Rachel that decided that they were going to say, no, sir, and follow up and try to get answers. It's what we actually needed in the last debate. And if he does decide that he's going to come out from his scary little corner and debate the vice president, I do hope whoever ends up being the moderators, that they learn a thing or two and go back to what journalism looks like, and they hold his feet to the fire.
All right. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett with the clap back. I love it. Thank you so much.